In this video, we're going to be solving proportion. A proportion shows that two ratios are equal. Corner Market sells 1 gallon of orange juice for every 5 gallons of milk it sells. If they sell 2,500 gallons of milk on the weekend, how many gallons of juice did they sell? So I've written the ratio from the first sentence, 5 gallons of orange juice, 1 gallon of orange juice to 5 gallons of milk, here with a colon to separate the numbers and as a fraction. And I've made a note that of which number is orange juice and which number is milk. This is a good thing to do when you first start to work with proportions, because it's really easy to just accidentally put the numbers in the wrong place and get the problem wrong. I would also do this on a test question. I would make a note just to make sure that I was getting the numbers in the right place. I wouldn't want to miss the question just because I got the numbers mixed up. So after I get the first ratio written from the sentence here, 1 gallon of orange juice for every 5 gallons of milk, I go to the next part of the problem. If they sell 2,500 gallons of milk on the weekend, so I want to put 2,500 with the amount for milk. So in the way I have this first one written, the 2,500 would go under M. So I'm just going to make a little cross chart here to put my numbers in, because that makes it easier when I'm typing. So if we had an unknown amount of orange juice, I could put X for that unknown amount, and 2,500 gallons of milk. If I wrote that problem with the way I have this ratio written, 1 to 5, I would make the second part of it X amount of orange juice for 2,500 gallons of milk. And I would put a line just there. So now we're going to solve this by cross multiplying or finding the cross product. So we're going to multiply across both directions. If I do that and I multiply 5 times x, that just looks like 5x. I can't really multiply it since I don't know what it is, but to represent multiply, I put the number next to the letter. And if that equals the amount multiplied on this side, 1 times 2,500 is 2,500. So now I know that 5 times the quantity we're looking for is equal to 2,500. So to solve this, I'm going to do the opposite of the operation that has been done in the problem. So right now, since we're talking about doing multiply, I'm going to divide both sides by 5. When I do that, I will be dividing a number that I have just multiplied, which will cancel out the numbers. So anytime you multiply by a number and then divide by that number, it will cancel out. Or if you divide by a number and then multiply by it, since they're opposite operations, one will cancel the other out. That will leave us with x on this side, and 2,500 divided by 5 is 500. So that's the amount of orange juice they sold on the weekend. Let's look at the problem that was written as a fraction. If we cross multiplied in that problem, we would have 1 times 2,500 and x times 5. So even though we wrote it in a different method of ratio, we still would come out with the same answer, since we're both multiplying x times 5 in both problems and 1 times 2,500. Let's look at this problem. Daytona Car Sales sells 1 black car and 2 red cars on Monday. If Daytona sells 360 red cars, how many black cars were sold during the same time period? So I've written the first ratio, black cars to red cars, 1 to 2. and as a fraction 1 to 2. So if I come back here and I'm going to write that 360 of the cars are red, that will make my black amount unknown and the red 360. And I'm just going to divide those with a line. Then where I have this one written, I haven't made the notes about which number stands for which item. I think I can remember, since I have it written right here, black to red, this is also black to red. So this amount would be black is unknown and red is 360. So now if I cross multiply, I'll end up in both cases multiplying 2 times x. And that's written as 2x. That will be equal to 1 times 360, which will equal 360. So now to get the x and the 2 separated from each other, I'm going to do the opposite of the sign. So if I divide both sides by 2, these will cancel out so that I'll just have a single x. X will be equal to 180. If a map uses the scale of 1 inch to 50 miles, how many miles apart are 2 cities that are 9 inches apart on the map? Choose the one that will not result in the correct answer. So what I suggest you do is work the problem on your own and then compare it to the examples, the answer choices that you're given. So if we write a ratio for the first sentence or first part of the sentence, we'll have 1 inch to 50 miles. So if we do 1 inch to 50 miles, we'll also keep that same pattern on the bottom of inches to the unknown amount of miles. Then if we cross multiply, we'll have 50 times 9, and you can use your GED calculator for that multiplication problem if you like. Be 450. And then if we multiply 1 times x, that will just be x. But I'm going to write 1x here for the time being, since I'm going to be dividing by the number. You can write 1x when you're working the problem, but if you only have 1x, anytime you read it on the GED test, you won't see the number 1. You'll just see the 1x. So maybe I shouldn't write it on here, but if I'm going to divide both of these numbers, I'm just going to put a single line under there. If I multiply both these numbers by 1, that's not going to change the numbers at all, because 1's going to go into 450 times. And 1 is going to go into 1x 1 time. So it's just going to be 450 equals x. So let's see if there's a problem here that matches what we've done. We multiplied 50 times 9 and divided by 1. So here's 9 times 50 divided by 1. So that's the same thing that we did. Here is 1 over 9, which we did, 1 over 9, and 50 over x. That's the same thing that we did. So that one's also an equal amount. Then we have 1 over 50. That could be 1 to 50, and 9 to x, 9 to x. So that's the same. So this last one must be the one that does not result in the same thing. Here they've multiplied 50 times 1, and that's not what we did at all. So that would be the incorrect, the answer that would not result in the correct answer would be D. Here we have 3 problems where we're asked if these proportions are true. So let's cross multiply and find 28 times 6. That amount, 28 times 6, is 168. Then if we multiply 24 times 7, that is also 168. So those are truly proportions. They equal each other. Here, if we cross multiply these numbers, we have 15 times 2 is 30, and 9 times 36, which is 324. So that is not a proportion. In this last one, let's look at another way to do the question besides cross multiply. Since we know that ratios can be reduced like fractions when they continue to have a top and bottom number, if we took 20 and divided by 2, we would get 10. If we had 6 and divided by 2, we would have 3. So those would be equal to each other. Another way to look at it is 10 is half of 20, and 3 is half of 6. So if the same thing is done to the top 2 numbers that is done to the bottom 2 numbers, then those are also equivalent, and so the proportion is true. This problem says solve for the unknown. So again, we're going to cross multiply. If we multiply 12 times 5, we'll have 60. And if we multiply, I can't seem to make the equal sign. X times 4 will be 4x. If we want to remove the 4 from the x, we'll do the opposite of what the operation tells us to do. So right now we have multiply by 4, so we're going to divide by 4. Divide by 4 on both sides. That will cancel these numbers, and we'll be left with 50 divided by 4. I'm sorry, I just realized that says 50, and that was a mistake, because that 12 times 5 is 60, and I said 60, but I typed a 5. 60, okay. So now we have 60 divided by 4. And 60 divided by 4 is 15, and that's the amount equal to x. All right. So here we have some practice problems that you can pause the video and solve for the questions, and I will do a follow-up video and go over each one. The first one asks which proportion is not true. So you'll be answering A, B, or C. Then there's 2 more questions before the final question, which says solve for the unknown. And there's actually 4 different problems there to solve for the unknown. So in total, there are 7 questions on the screen. So I don't want you to get confused, since the first one is A, B, and C, and you only choose one. I didn't want you to think the bottom line was also only choose one. So you're going to choose one answer for the first question, but at the bottom you're going to work all 4 questions. So I hope that this video will be helpful and that you will come back and see the answers to these problems. And thank you very much.